Welcome, friends, to another exciting episode of A VGM Journey. And I'm your host, The Messenger. The track that we're playing into today's show is the title theme from Robocop 3, and it was composed by Jeroen. I don't have a whole lot of top-of-the-show business, but I do want to take a quick moment and say thank you to everyone who's been continually listening to this show. It's pretty hard to believe that we've made it to level 25. I've done 25 of these already. I mean, not counting the other episodes. And I would like to say that I'm only scratching the surface. I'm hoping to have many more of these coming out and also to get better as we're moving along. So, once again, thank you for your continued support. I think that will be enough of the mushy stuff. Let's get into some music. I got something from Monsters, Inc. Scream Arena. This is the main menu theme, and it was composed by Marc, Baril. That track that you just listened to, that was main menu theme from the game Monsters, Inc. Scream Arena, and it was composed by Marc, Baril. This was one of those games that it was a one-time rental for me, and, I played it, and I just kind of thought it was pretty underwhelming. And I guess you kind of expect that from a lot of these licensed games, but I do have to say, even though the soundtrack is not 100% Monsters, Inc., it totally sounds like the movie, which I find it kind of weird because it's a game where you play as the various Monsters, Inc. characters playing dodgeball. Yeah, you just throw balls at each other. And there's like all this jazzy music playing. I think it's one of those things where the soundtrack is actually quite a bit better than the actual game itself. And I actually originally had this song for kind of a secret crossover on another podcast coming up. That's all I'm going to say about it. Moving on, I have a request from an old friend of mine. His name is JD, and he wanted me to play something from Pocket Tanks. This is the in-game music, and it was composed by Eliran Ben Ishai, better known as DNA Groove. Let's give this one a listen. That track that we just listened to, that was in-game music from the game Pocket Tanks, and it was composed by DNA Groove. Oh, and it was also requested by JD, who also goes by Deloon1989. And I actually failed to mention that he was the host of the now defunct Play and Listen gaming podcast, which it used to be just a gaming only podcast, but then he decided, hey, I'm just going to just play VGM on it. And that's how I found out about his show. I even guested on an episode of his show. And it was a good time. But all he really had to say about this Pocket Tanks track was, my middle school VGM nostalgia itch is severely scratched by this. And I want to say that he requested this based off of my Bugdom track from last week, because I played that in school. So, thank you for the request, JD. I hope things are going well for you, buddy. This next track, I know a lot of you guys are pretty familiar with it, so I'm not going to waste any time with any kind of introductions. This is Chemical Plant Zone from the game Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and it was composed by Masato Nakamura. That classic track that you just heard, that was Chemical Plant Zone from the game Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and it was composed by Masato Nakamura. That track is an absolute classic, and I will admit, I'm not really much of a Sonic fan, but I decided to play Sonic the Hedgehog 2 a little bit pretty recently, and oh man, this story's a little bit embarrassing. I was having a little bit of trouble with Chemical Plant Zone, specifically Act 2 and On the Boss, because you're fighting Dr. Robotnik and you're also dealing with the floor, like, flipping and you could fall to your death. And that kept happening to me, so I was just pissing through all my lives on this stupid boss, and I was down to my last life, and I told my girlfriend Carly, watch, I'm gonna somehow beat this boss and I'm gonna die right there. So I'm fighting him and I beat him. And when you hit him, you kind of bounce off of him. And what happened was I beat him, I bounced off of him, down to my death, game over. Put the controller down and I walked away from that room. That was not the happiest of stories, but I know she had a pretty good laugh out of it. And I think she's gonna definitely like this next track that I'm going to play. So I want to play something from Spyro the Dragon. This is Wizard Peak, and it was composed by Stewart Copeland. That track that you just listened to, that was Wizard Peak from the game Spyro the Dragon, and it was composed by Stewart Copeland. That's going to just about do it for the show this week. If you like what you've been listening to, give me a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. And if your friends are looking for a new podcast to listen to, have them check me out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever podcasting service that you could think of, I'm more than likely going to be on there. And you can also email the show at vgmjourney@yahoo.com. And also check me out on Twitter at vgmjourney. I want to thank JD for his request. And I also want to thank everybody that has listened to the show. I couldn't have done this without you guys. I'm also going to play out with one more track. This is the TKO theme from the Jackbox Party Pack 3. And it was composed by Brian Chard. Have a good week, everyone.